Hello, how are you all? Happy Sabbath, and I hope you all enjoy an indoor week because it has been very hot. And I hope you all are doing very, very well. Tonight, my prayer is that God will enlighten us with His truths in this confusing world, and that His blessing of love, of care, of wisdom be upon us all. We've been studying the book Mount of Blessing from Ellen White, and it is from the book Matthew chapter 5 to chapter 7. Tonight the topic is on being judgmental or being critical of others. You know, a new Pew Research Center analysis find out that last year, among churches that posted the sermon or homilies or worship services online between August 31st and November 8th, 2/3 of them posted at least one message in the pulpit mentioning about the election. And roughly of all evangelical Protestant sermons discuss specific issues, parties, or candidates. And in discussing the election, many of the evangelical pastors tend to employ language related to like evil, punishment at a greater degree. They use words and phrases like Satan or hell at least twice as often as other clergy did. Are they being judgmental? I have another example. These are taken among young people. And these young people graded Christianity. And so far, how they graded doesn't look too good. The studies show majority of young people between the age of 16 to 29 in America describe modern-day Christianity as judgmental, hypocritical. And what's more, many Christians don't even want to call themselves Christian because of the baggage that accompanies the label. Do modern-day Christians still practicing Christianity according to Christ's sermon and teaching? Well, we cannot judge others, but for us, we need to learn from Him. So that's why tonight, we're going to turn to Matthew chapter 7, starting with verse 1. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. So what is the meaning of judge here? The Greek word judge means to pronounce judgment, express severe disapproval of the deeds and words of others. And also before we go into explaining this verse, we must clarify the difference between making a judgment and being judgmental. To make a judgment is when we are making an objective decision about what would bring the desired outcome of a situation, or what is the best to do for a person whom I'm responsible for in order to protect him or her from danger or being hurt. It is for the goodness of that person. And for Christians, making judgment is also about discerning what is good and what is evil, to make spiritual evaluation to guard our hearts against error and sin. But this verse is not really about this kind of judgments. It is teaching followers of Christ to avoid having the spirit of being judgmental, that is quick to point out others' flaws. It is the act of judging someone personally without reason. The intent is to try to make oneself look better than the other. And it is usually fueled by self-righteousness. You know, even the disciples were judgmental. When they saw a man who was born blind, they asked Jesus, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" What leads a person to be negatively judge another person? Christians are supposed to be caring and loving, right? Well, psychologists said being critical can be a defense mechanism a person uses to hide their own problem or imperfection by attributing these negative traits on another person. Example, Judas, right? Jesus' disciple, Judas. Judas accused Mary of Bethany of wasting money on expensive perfume pouring on Jesus. And he said that, well, she should have given all this money to the poor. But in reality, we knew that he was not that perfect. He was not really concerned about the poor. In fact, he was frequently stealing money for himself from the public money bag that he was in charge of for the disciples. Well, someone said, anyone who likes to flaunt their own goodness, their own righteousness, and at the same time express intense disapproval against those whom they think are bad people, are transgressors, are likely themselves have terrible flaws. So those who judge others severely, and those people who put themselves on the pedestal, are usually people who have terrible flaws. Well, what can this spirit of judgmental lead to? I have 7 points. First point, if this spirit is allowed to fester, it will eventually lead to using force or compulsion to make other people doing what is right according to their own eyes. And these people will force men to comply with their own ideas of what they think is right and good. And this is exactly what the Jewish religious leader did in Jesus' days, and what the church did during the Middle Ages. The Pharisees and the medieval church created a lot of rules and regulations, and they said that they are explaining God's laws. And they have religious courts, and the church in those days even have power to influence politics. As a result, the life of the people were overburdened with these rules, and religion became hard work, unpleasant, and drudgery. Second point, and this kind of spirit would create atmosphere of spiritual pride. And whoever attains or able to fulfill this requirement will become the standard for everybody else. And that would lead to self-righteousness. Third point, the self-reliance behavior will turn people to righteousness by word. That means that by themselves, by what they do, they can attain righteousness. And that would bring them away, drive them away from leaning on the righteousness of Jesus Christ. Fourth point, this spirit would create a judgmental atmosphere where everyone becomes self-centered judge or petty spies. And the Pharisee spy on Jesus frequently to see whether he observed the Sabbath, whether the things he taught were according to the tradition. Well, Jesus always teach what is right in the scripture, but he also pointed out hypocritical traditions that were not designed by God. Fifth point, judgmental atmosphere in the church prevents noble and generous spirit, because people have forgotten their own flaws and that what Christ had done for their sin. They think that they themselves did it. So why can't other people do it too? So it deters the spirit of generous, forgiving. Sixth point, when people think they can work on their own righteousness, they won't appreciate God's gift of salvation. Every one of us needs salvation through Jesus Christ. 7th point. The judgmental people eventually will lose sight of whom they are worshiping and for what purpose they came to worship, and religion will become meaningless. Well, Jesus saw it all. It was in reference to this spirit and practice that Jesus said, "Do not judge others and you will not be judged." In another word, Jesus was saying, don't set yourself up as a standard. Don't make your opinions, your views, your duty, your interpretation of scripture as a criteria for other people. And in your heart, you condemn others because they don't come up to your ideal. So in verse 2, Jesus said, because if you judge others, what happens? That for you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. And Paul also said in Romans 2:1, he said, you may think you can condemn such people, but you're just as bad. And you have no excuse. When you say they are wicked and should be punished, you're condemning yourself. For you who judge others do these very same things. And now Jesus went on to tell the multitude in verse 3 and 4. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye, when you cannot see past the log in your own eye? What Jesus is saying is the person who is quick to point out others' flaws should think about his own un-Christ-like character, which is in comparison to the other ones that he's judging. His flaw is as big as a log, and the other person is only the size of a speck. And the book also pointed out that those who are critical of others most probably have never experienced true remorse of their own sin. And they have never experienced the forgiving love of Christ. So no wonder he is conceited and so quick to judge the others. None of us are qualified to be a standard for other people. Only Christ is a true standard of character. The Bible said, God the Father hath committed all judgment unto the Son, John 5:22, and no one else. Those who judge are taking away the right and the privilege that belongs only to the Son of God. Critical spirit in the church creates loveless environment. The church will become void of love. And the book said Jesus is not there. Even though there may be a flurry of good works, but Jesus is not there. Jesus scolded the Pharisees, a hypocrite. First get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eyes. As I have mentioned earlier, that critical spirit is a defense system employed by someone who is trying very hard to hide their own imperfection by projecting it onto others. Do you remember the story of Adam and Eve? We are familiar with that. As soon as they sinned, they began to do what? They began to accuse each other of being the cause of the fall. This is human nature when God's grace is not inside their hearts. So, for the accuser, Jesus advised them to get rid of this critical spirit and ask God for forgiveness. This person needs to be cleansed by the blood of Christ. In Luke 6:43, Jesus said, "A good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither does a corrupt tree bring forth good fruits." Being judgmental and critical are corrupted fruit. After one has been cleansed by Christ's blood, good fruit will come. You know, there'll be a time that other people might be in crisis and need your counseling. So Ellen White said that words can do good only when we are filled with the grace of Christ, because our character has been made again to be tender and generous with compassion and love like Christ. When this change happens, it will be natural for us to bless those who are in need of our help. We'll be able to counsel them with God's wisdom and the love of Christ. Our objective as followers of Christ is to help, to bless, and to save others. We are generous and compassionate to others because Christ has been generous and compassionate to us. Christ did not drive, but draws men to him by love. No one has ever been drawn to Christ through this critical and judgmental spirit. Ellen White said, "The revelation of Christ in our character will have a transforming power upon all with whom you come in contact. Let Christ be daily made manifest in you, and who will reveal through you the creative energy of his word, a gentle, persuasive, yet my influence to recreate other souls in the beauty of the Lord our God." So Christian should be known for how deeply we love, how compassionate we are, how understanding we are. I visited a blog written by Marissa Baker, who wrote about Jesus loving those whom the Jews regarded as sinners, unworthy to be loved. She listed some examples. She said Jesus had a nice friendly chat with a woman who had been married 5 times and was living with a man not her husband. This is recorded in John 4, 1-30. And he forgave a woman caught in the very act of adultery. And this is in John chapter 8, 1-11. And he saved a man from possession by legions of demons and promptly involved him in preaching the gospel. Mark 5, 1-20. And the first person Jesus appeared to after his resurrection was a woman who once hosted 7 devils. This is in Mark 16:9. Jesus offered love, healing, and forgiveness to these people, and he never held the past against them. His focus was on moving them forward into a better walk with him. And let us do the same. Happy Sabbath.